Russian forces pummeling Ukrainian positions along the front lines, Ukrainian military officials said, as attacks on Russian soil by Ukraine continue. RT correspondent Igor Zhdanov has more of the latest updates on Kursk.
Ukrainian militants, they have been trying to hit targets and to hit just anything that they can here in the town of Kursk and in the neighboring towns as well. Not a day goes by here without the wailing of air raid sirens and pops and explosions in the air as Russian air defense systems are working relentlessly here, and they have really no rest. At the same time, the fighting indeed continues closer to the border. Both sides have been trying to attack, and the Ukrainian militants, they have been trying to expand the area of control that they do have right now in the Kursk region. All those attempts have been denied by the Russian army. The Russian Defense Ministry has posted videos online of burning NATO equipment and, well, just killed military personnel. At the same time, when it comes to the border fighting, this is far from the only hotspot on the map when it comes to the internationally recognized Russian territory. In the neighboring Belgorod region, the Ukrainian armed forces also have been trying to cross the border to carry on with this border incursion and to, well, gain a foothold on the Russian soil. These attempts have been thwarted as well, but the fighting on the border has been very, very intense. In fact, the local authorities, they have offered temporary evacuation, and they have in fact advised temporary evacuation to the residents of one of the state districts. And in fact, civilians have been temporarily banned from entering that district just for the purposes and for the sake of their safety. At the same time, on Monday, almost a week since the beginning of this operation, Vladimir Zelensky has for the first time commented on the actions of Kiev here in the Kursk region.
We see how Russia really moves in the times of Putin. 24 years ago, there was the Kursk disaster, the symbolic beginning of his rule. And now we can see what the end for him is. And it is also Kursk, the disaster of his war.
Zelensky there is referencing to a disaster, to a tragedy of the Kursk atomic submarine that happened back in year 2000, and it saw the death of its entire crew. So he's kind of making a reference. The submarine was named Kursk. Now he is carrying out a border operation, a border incursion operation in the Kursk region. So he's being metaphorical here, but how successful this operation is going to be and how tragic it's going to be, and more importantly, for who? For Vladimir Putin or for Zelensky? Well, it is way too early to tell, and certainly for when it comes to the Russian authorities, to the Russian government, they are adamant that they will regain control of the entire Kursk region. In fact, Vladimir Putin has once again addressed the situation on the border.
Such actions, of course, pursue a military goal to stop the offensive of our troops to completely liberate the territory of Lugansk and Donetsk republics, as well as the territory of Novorossiya. And what are their results? The pace of offensive operations by the Russian armed forces has not decreased, but on the contrary, increased by 1.5 times. Our armed forces are moving forward along the entire line of contact.
Take us back to what we were seeing on Sunday, if you would. Dramatic pictures of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant that came under Ukrainian drone attack. We saw one of the cooling towers was on fire on its base kind of foundation area. The worry was it might even collapse. You have any updates on how that investigation is going?
Well, so far the IAEA, or the International Atomic Energy Agency, the one that you've just mentioned, they have been, throughout the history of this conflict, they have been very concerned about the situation on the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. But so far their involvement there has been limited to just that. They have abstained from saying who was responsible for that strike. And for those very dramatic images of a cooling tower being ablaze after a drone attack, they have just called for both sides to show restraint, really. And so when you have that, and when you have the fact that the facility is well under the Russian control, and Russian personnel like Russian workers, they are stationed there. They are the ones who are. It's under the Russian management right now. So really, it makes very, very little sense for Russia to shell itself. So it's hardly a question as to who's responsible for that strike. It seems that the IAEA simply have their hands tied by some higher ups, by some higher powers, as they simply cannot call publicly on the Kyiv regime to stop the attacks, given how close the situation has historically throughout the history of this conflict has gotten to a very, very potentially tragic and massive disaster.